Welcome to the another session of diuretic. In this session, we discussed about the thiazide diuretics and the potassium sparing diuretic. With the thiazide diuretics, they are the moderate diuretics causing almost 8 to 10 percentage of sodium elimination, and they are the most widely used diuretic amongst the all other diuretics. Regarding its mechanism of action, they specifically act at a distal convoluted tubule where they can inhibit the sodium chloride co-transport pump. By inhibition of this transport pump, the tubular fluid contained more sodium and chloride, and that increased sodium reached towards the collecting duct. Then from the collecting tubule, some amount of sodium is reabsorbed in exchange with the potassium ion, and that can increase the elimination of more potassium ion along with sodium and chloride ion, and that is the reason thiazide diuretic also produce hypokalemic effect. Then as opposite effect comparison with the high ceiling diuretic, where high ceiling diuretic can increase the calcium elimination, while thiazide diuretic can decrease urinary calcium excretion. So, thiazide diuretic decrease the calcium concentration of urine by increasing its reabsorption. It is because low level of intracellular sodium enhance the sodium activation of sodium calcium exchange pump. So, in exchange with the sodium, calcium ion is reabsorbed through this channel, and that action is basically influenced by the parathyroid hormone. As well as like high ceiling diuretic, thiazide diuretic can also decrease the peripheral vascular resistance by synthesizing a prostaglandin, and that produce vasodilatory effect. Two different container, hydrochlorothiazide, which is the most popular amongst the all other thiazide diuretics. Best part is that it required very low dose, and at low dose it produced significant antihypertensive effect without developing any much adverse drug reaction. Another one is indapamide, which is longer acting. Low dose can produce a significant antihypertensive effect. Main advantage of indapamide is that it is eliminated through gastrointestinal mucosa. So if at all person having renal failure, you can safely administer indapamide to reduce blood pressure. Regarding the therapeutic uses, they are most widely used diuretic for a treatment of hypertension, where thiazide diuretics are known as an inexpensive in comparison with all other diuretic, as well as it alone can reduce the blood pressure for a longer period of time. Initially the pressure is maintained by its diuretic effect, later on it is maintained by its vasodilator effect. Specifically in case of pregnancy induced hypertension, they are contraindicated. The reason for that, being a diuretic drug, they produce volume depletion, and that volume depletion may produce harmful effect to the fetus. Another indication is congestive heart failure. Thiazide diuretics may have additional benefit if added with a high ceiling diuretic, just to clear the edema which is produced due to failing heart. Another indication is the hypercalciuria. As thiazide diuretic increase the reabsorption of calcium from the renal tubule, it is helpful to prevent recurrent calcium stone. Then the another indication, or we can say that totally opposite action generated in case of diabetic insipidus. This is a condition which produce polyuria, increase urine output. By using thiazide diuretic, it produce contrast effect, and that can reduce urine output. Though being a diuretic agent, how it can reduce the urine output? So for that, the mechanism behind that is thiazide diuretics can inhibit the phosphodiesterase enzyme, and we know that the function of this enzyme is to metabolize cyclic AMP. So that gradually there is an increase in a cyclic AMP level, and that increased cyclic AMP level can increase membrane permeability for water. Another mechanism is that by its diuretic effect, thiazide diuretics can eliminate fluid, more fluid from the body. So there is a decrease in extracellular fluid volume. So whenever there is a decrease in extracellular fluid volume, from proximal tubular cell, more and more sodium and water is reabsorbed. So at latter part of tubules, less amount of fluid is reached, and that leads to ultimately decrease in the urine output. So these two mechanisms are mainly responsible: inhibition of phosphodiesterase enzyme and decrease extracellular fluid volume, and that can reduce urine output in case of diabetic insipidus. Regarding the adverse effect, many common adverse effect as a high ceiling diuretic were produced: hyperuricemia, hypercalcemia, hyperglycemia, and hypersensitivity reaction. So almost all hyper effect were produced with the thiazide diuretic. Some hypo effect, hypokalemia, volume depletion, as well as they can produce hepatic coma. Hepatic coma, that one can say that there is increased sodium and chloride elimination that can decrease extracellular fluid volume, and due to that more aldosterone is secreted. Increased aldosterone secretion produce hypokalemia, and that hypokalemia produce alkalosis. So more and more ammonia is generated. Now diseased liver cannot convert ammonia into an urea, so that more ammonia can cross the blood brain barrier, and that can produce hepatic encephalopathy or hepatic coma is produced. Regarding the drug interactions, for both high ceiling as well as the thiazide diuretics, with aminoglycoside produce ototoxic effect, with indomethacin being a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug inhibit the prostaglandin action, and the high ceiling diuretic produce vasodilatation through prostaglandin, so it can decrease the effect of high ceiling diuretic. They can potentiate if it is administered with the other antihypertensive drugs. They can enhance the digitalis toxicity, as digitalis is one of the drug to use for a congestive heart failure. The effect of digitalis is basically based on a potassium level. If it is hypokalemia, more toxic effect is generated. So both high ceiling and the thiazide both produce hypokalemia, so they can enhance the digitalis toxicity, as well as they can increase the reabsorption of lithium and likely to produce lithium toxicity, and with probenecid inhibit the tubular secretion. So ultimately there is a competition between probenecid and the diuretic towards the same transport pump to get inside the tubular fluid. Second one is potassium sparing diuretic. Spironolactone and eplerenone, they are the directly and having antagonizing effect towards the aldosterone. The primary action which is generated is they can retain a potassium ion. They are known as a mild diuretics, so they are not used as an alone for its diuretic effect, but just to prevent potassium loss, they can be added with the high ceiling diuretic or the thiazide diuretics therapy. To understand the action of spironolactone, we must recall the how aldosterone can produce its action. When the more aldosterone is released, that aldosterone inside a cell bind with the mineralocorticoid receptor. That receptor with aldosterone, that whole complex move towards a nucleus where they can bind with the DNA, and they can make some changes to synthesize a certain protein, and those protein can synthesize more and more sodium channels, as well as they can synthesize sodium potassium ATPase pump. We know that the function of the sodium channel to reabsorb sodium ion, and the function of the sodium potassium ATPase pump in exchange with the sodium ion, potassium ion is secreted back. So this is how aldosterone can produce its effect. Now if we like spironolactone, the spironolactone, instead of aldosterone, spironolactone bind with the receptor site. The whole complex move inside a nucleus, but now there is a no synthesis of protein which can synthesize a sodium channel and which can synthesize sodium potassium ATPase pump. So ultimately they can reduce up sodium reabsorption, as well as they can retain as well as they can prevent secretion of potassium ion. So by this way they can retain a potassium ion. Regarding the pharmacokinetic parameters, you say that they are orally well absorbed, strongly bound to the plasma protein. The beneficial feature of spironolactone is that after metabolism it is converted to its active metabolite, and that is candrenone. And the half-life of candrenone is 18 hours. It is administered in dose of 20 to 50 milligram 2 times a day. Regarding the indication, basic therapeutic uses of spironolactone is to counteract the potassium loss in case of hypertension, in congestive heart failure or edematous state. Basically they are added with the high ceiling or thiazide diuretic. Regarding the adverse drug reaction, they produce a gynecomastia and menstrual irregularity. That is because of being a steroidal in nature. They can also bind with the other steroidal receptor like androgen and progesterone receptor. And by binding with that receptor, they produce this side effect, gynecomastia and menstrual irregularity. Additionally, being a potassium sparing diuretic, produce hyperkalemia and mental confusion. To overcome this side effect, uh, let us see the interactions of spironolactone. It interact with the other potassium supplement and produce hyperkalemia. With AC inhibitors and ARB, it produce hyperkalemia. With aspirin, aspirin can block the secretion of spironolactone, and with digitalis, as digitalis action binding is reduced in presence of hyperkalemia, so there is an increased digitalis concentration. Another container is aplerinone. It is designed in such a way that it only binds towards the aldosterone receptor. Other steroidal receptors are not affected, and if they are not affected, those hormonal disturbances which are produced with the spironolactone, that cannot be produced. Only thing is that this is a costlier compared to spironolactone. And the directly uh, sodium channel inhibitor and they can retain a potassium ion is amlodipine and amiloride and trimethoprim. They directly inhibit the sodium channel. So if sodium channels are inhibited, there is a no further secretion of potassium ion. So they by indirect way they can retain a potassium ion. So they are known as a direct sodium channel inhibitor just to retain a potassium ion. Main adverse drug reaction which is produces hyperkalemia. If we can compare both amiloride and trimethoprim, amiloride is more potent, required less dose, that is 5 to 10 milligram once a day, in comparison with the trimethoprim which required 50 to 100 milligram daily. That diuretics and the potassium sparing diuretic. Remaining diuretic is discussed in a next session. Thank you.